All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Been the number one show for well over, I think we're actually approaching 2 years straight of the number one podcast on innovative teamwork. I appreciate all you listeners. I appreciate everyone that has rocked with me from day one since its inception back in 2020. It's crazy to know that we've been at this for close to 5 years now. So, the to my if this is your first time listening, I mean, not, excuse me, if you're for my regular listeners, excuse me, my regular listeners, you already know how we get down here. Whatever the obstacle is, whatever the challenge is, whatever you may be going through, we are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. Today, I have the founder of a company called Focused. All right, and we're gonna dive deeper into exactly how to go about building things called junior workforces and making you more efficient as a business owner. Mr. Sho Ishikura, welcome to the show. That's kind of
Yeah,
welcome to
I was
the show,
one.
Sho Ishikura. Tongue
Thanks
twister.
for having me. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, great to have you. And like I was telling you before we actually started recording, you really help business owners when it comes to, getting them focused and utilizing, understanding the amount of distractions that we have in this world. But you actually started off as a singer. You have a background doing things that, kind of plug that were not maybe looking like what you're doing now. So to
I
start
know.
things off, can you just kind of speak a little bit about your background, maybe what school was like, and touch on some of your singing, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like you're saying, I was a musician really, and singing is just one part of the things that I do
Mhm.
in the music world. I also am a songwriter. And the connection with what I'm doing now of focus and distraction is because I experienced such a high level of distraction and its impacts on my ability to function
Hmm.
in the arena of songwriting, which
Mm.
is really the thing that I love to do
Right,
the most.
right.
So it got really bad to a point where I was unable to sit down and do the thing that I love the most,
Hmm.
completely unable to do it. And I was like, this is something that is, I need to find a solution for this because it was killing me
Hmm.
spiritually. And at the same time, I was going through a grad program. If am not able to write music, forget about trying to get.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Was this something that you recognized while you were in school? Because so, what year did you graduate?
It was 2022.
Point. So,
Uh,
oh yeah, yeah. So you're like, so social media was becoming was already has become a thing, and it has already kind of taken over. So when you were in school, what was kind of the school experience like, and were you in situations where you started to feel yourself getting distracted, maybe with a test or maybe with something that was going on, and you realize, hey, I could potentially have a problem?
yeah, it was definitely around that time, and I also it's something that's been uh kind of an ongoing issue for me since I was a, a kid.
Yeah.
I was in special ed programs because there were teachers were noticing like this is not paying attention. So I
Right.
was like, I think I'm already kind of operating on
Hmm.
some kind of deficit as far as that goes. But I noticed that really over the years, like
Hmm.
particularly when COVID started, and we're not as spending much more time online, um, that it started getting significantly worse. So
Hmm.
yeah, during to answer your questions, like while I was in school, um, I was trying to keep up with music stuff. I was trying to graduate. I was trying to work, and I was
Right.
suffering in all those arenas. Um, there was, it, interestingly, it was actually part of my training and my coursework as a therapist that helped me with that. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Before you go there, though, and I want to make sure I'm sort of making the connection there. When you
Yeah.
talk about therapy and you talk about being a songwriter, so much of that stuff connects. So much
Yeah.
of that stuff there's definitely, I don't know if you've heard the term, but I kind of heard the term music therapy. I know me personally, there's some songs that I can cut on right now, and it
Mm.
helps me cover up some of the resentment, cover up or not cover it up, but help me to know that somebody else is going through something similar that I'm
Right.
going through. just through a song. So I'm curious now, like when you talk about becoming a therapist and then having this passion for songwriting, where were you kind of in your sweet spot? Where were you like really seeing a connection and realizing, hey, there's really something I have here that is going to be able to serve the world, utilize my gifts and all that kind of stuff.
I love that question because I think about that all the time, the
Yeah,
connection between these two different worlds.
yeah,
For me, a lot of it has to do with presence, the ability when you're writing something to kind of be
yes.
really present, what's in front of you, and like tap into either the song that you're working on or
Mhm.
performing. It kind of parallels to being a therapist and you have a client in front of you and you're being really present with
Yeah,
what they're experiencing, right?
right, right.
And so much of distraction, the thing that I'm really trying to help people with,
Mhm.
distraction is all about not being present. It's about you're distracting yourself from something
Hmm.
that either an uncomfortable feeling or some kind of argument you had earlier that day,
Hmm.
or you're feeling bored, overwhelmed with the project that you're working on, right? So I think that's how all of that kind of
Hmm.
connects with me. I was just dealing with distraction in these different ways and realizing like actually I figured out how to overcome it and I was like, I want to figure out a way that I can deliver this to
Right.
people. Yeah.
So were you like studying to become a therapist, and how was that? What was that process like in grad school and all that? Feel free to kind of explain a little deeper.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So yeah, I was studying to become a therapist. As I was talking about during that time, I was dealing with really crippling levels of distraction, inability
And
to
what
focus.
type of therapist was it?
Uh, Counseling, mental health counseling. So I'm
Okay.
currently working as a psychotherapist.
Okay.
Uh, but actually, what kind of started turning it around was a class that was on treating people that are dealing with substance abuse.
Uh,
Now, the link between all this stuff I'm talking about and dealing with substance abuse is actually really interesting.
I mean, I grew up in a Caribbean household, man, and I mean, I was around alcohol, whether it's family events and you see it in the home, where social drinking is accepted. And as I grew up, when I was actually in college, I did have a bit of a drinking problem myself, and luckily, for the past year, I've pretty much been sober. But when you're talking about the substance abuse and with the distractions that we have now, you can slip into a very a dangerous habit that's really hard to kick. So, yeah, please explain more.
Yeah, absolutely. And what happened was we're learning about how to treat people with substance abuse. They had us do this program that was 6 weeks where we choose a substance or a behavior to abstain from, right? So it could be drinking, but it could also be uh, looking at my phone in the
Oh,
morning and at night.
yep.
And this journey over the course of
Hmm.
6 weeks was a wild one for me because
Right.
I was at the point where I didn't realize how anxious that I was
Right.
because I would just wake up, instantly look at my phone, look at social media, look at news, answer emails, like all the things that are like
Mhm.
require short, fragmented, kind of multitasking type attention, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going through this thing for 6 weeks. I take my phone away and I wake up in the morning. Oh, wow, I'm incredibly anxious.
Hmm.
I didn't even realize that was there because I've been covering it up every morning and every night.
Right.
Around this time, this has been going on for like years at this point.
Mhm.
I'm also waking up in the middle of the night with my heart pounding at like 2 or 3 a.m.
Oh my
And then
God.
I can't go back to sleep, so I pick up my phone and
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm describing something that so many young people do. And
Exactly.
it's kind of like this is something that we accept as more and more normal as time goes on. And I'm
Mhm.
telling people that this isn't normal, you know?
Right.
Anyway, so what happened was I take that away.
Hmm.
I'm starting to get to feel this anxiety, right?
Right.
Uh, we're learning about how the we're journaling about our experience every week and
Hmm.
talking about what it feels like to take this thing away. You're dealing with, oh, I actually on this day, I said, you know what, screw it. This isn't helping me anyway. I
Hmm.
don't feel I feel worse because I'm more anxious. Let me
Hmm.
just start using my phone again. That's what happened. Like that's kind of like the quote unquote relapse, right?
Right.
And essentially what ended up happening was I kept going with it. I started doing a meditation to replace that habit of looking at the phone in the morning. And I felt over the course of a couple weeks this crescendo of anxiety.
Hmm.
And I started allowing myself to sit with it. And it got really intense on this one particular morning where I had this visualization of a hand grasping around my neck.
Hmm.
And I thought that, oh my God, this is it was very scary, but I also was telling myself simultaneously that I'm totally safe and
Right.
nothing really bad can happen to me. And
Hmm.
those two things together, it's teaching that taught me that I can handle my anxiety. It's
Right.
not going to kill me, and
Right.
that you learn to embrace some of that,
Hmm.
um, to be able to sit with that uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
Now, the connection here is that this is the first time in human history where we have instant access to some kind of distraction, something that's going to take us away from our anxiety with zero barrier. This thing right here,
Yes.
it provides that kind of instant getaway for us.
Right.
And that's it's a major technological innovation for which we do not have an appropriate solution for, an appropriate holistic response for.
Yes.
So now what happens is we're fighting with our willpower to kind of prevent that. We're not educated on what it's doing to us mentally, and we're expected to just be able to just put it down.
Right.
Just don't look at it. You know what I mean? And I think it requires more of a we need more education on it.
Hmm.
People need help with it, and particularly young people that grew up immersed in this device-rich environment and don't have a reference point for what life was like before that.
Yes.
It's going to be
How do
very
you
important.
how do you go about teaching that? How do you go about explaining that to people? Because, like you said, I believe the problem, like you stated, has gotten so bad that people do it and they don't even realize that it is a drug. They don't even realize the kind of dopamine hits. In fact, just early this morning, I was listening to, shout out to Dre Baldwin. I was listening to one of his lives, and he did a live called The Death of Journalism. And he was speaking on how journalism tried to compete with social media. And social media is all about likes, dopamine hits, and who can be more popular. So they just started pushing their own opinions on people. And now, because they don't give you actual truth, now everyone has their own facts. They go, get information from where they want to get it. And now we see more of a divided society, even though we're
Yeah.
actually technically more connected. But everybody has their opinion. And, if you don't like what somebody says, you could just go listen to somebody else who you do agree with. And now you don't really have to get you don't have to get uncomfortable, but we both know the growth is going to come from getting out the comfort zone. The growth is going to actually come when you have a conversation with somebody that you may not agree with, and you are able to talk it out and you're able to see each other's points. And that's how we grow as a society. So the question I would ask you though is when you're talking to young people who've gotten so stuck in this world, has gotten this habit, whether it's a young person or it's a business owner who is so stuck in their own way, and every time something makes them uncomfortable, they find some excuse, they find some way not to do it. I mean, I could probably talk to you for hours on the people that, they'll use this thing as an excuse to not do certain things, ghosting this one, all that kind of stuff. How do you really steer them in the right direction when whether they come to you and stuff like that? Where do you normally tell them to go for a first step?
Well, I would say, four different components of like
Yeah.
how I try to work with that.
Hmm.
Um, One of the first things though really boils down to intentionality and being deliberate with your time, right? So
Hmm.
what some
That's a
people
good
do,
one. That's a big one, and I don't want to cut you off there, but I don't
yeah,
to kind of brush that one over, listeners. You got to be intentional. I believe that's. I mean, you nailed it. If you wake up every single morning being very, just like you were with the phone, you were very intentional about the fact I am not looking at this thing. I don't want to do it. And even though things got rough on you, it's like, I'm not doing it. And you had an intention when you woke up. If you have no intentions, if you have no goals, if you have nothing that you want to be, you don't even stand a chance. We haven't even gotten to the next three. But the intention part, you need to have a goal, set it, and just relentlessly go after it and be laser focused on it. So, all right, go
I
ahead.
love that. Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. Yeah. Just to add to that too, um, being intentional with your time. So I talk a lot about time blocking, which is something a lot of people know about, I think, but I think that the benefits of it are kind of underrated. You
Yeah.
know, when you're talking about, um, I'm just focusing on this task for this period of time.
Hmm.
And then after that, I'm going to be doing this for this period of time.
Right, right.
You're eliminating the processing power that you don't even realize that you're using, where you're thinking about, oh, is this the best thing I could be doing right now?
Mhm.
What should I be doing
Doubt,
next?
right? That doubt,
Like
right?
that takes up actually a little bit of your, CPU power in your brain. On top of that, when you're not intentional with your time, you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to answer some of these emails real quick that just
Mhm.
popped up. I'm getting these notifications.
Yep.
I'm still being productive.
Yep.
But actually, what's happening is that context switching. You're working on this task, focusing. You switch over, you answer an email real quick, you come back. It
Mhm.
actually require your brain actually needs a little bit of time. And
Mhm.
this is actually shown in scientific studies that the neurons in your brain need time to recalibrate back on the original task at hand.
Mhm.
And on average, they say it takes about 11 minutes for you to recalibrate on the original thing you were focusing on. Now you multiply that by the amount of distractions that happen in a day. For an average knowledge worker, that might be about 50.
All right.
What's 50 times 11 minutes? I don't know. I think it's like 4 hours. And then you see something like
Mhm.
that's why the average knowledge worker is only productive 2.5 hours a day. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly.
So, especially when we have a younger cohort coming in,
Mhm.
they define themselves as multitaskers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gen Z, they don't
Well,
have the
and
education.
then too, the term entrepreneur gets thrown around a lot in social media. You think it's cool to be an entrepreneur, so you want to have your hands and your fingers in so many different things. But a lot of people don't realize, look, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. To be all the way real with you, it's just not for everyone. And you calling yourself a business owner just because you have a website does not make you a business owner just because you're able to balance and do a lot of different things via social media. That is not the case. I know it's can get
Mm,
confusing because of what we have and how connected we can be, in this world, but you really got to ask yourself like I said, what the intention is and what the goals are every single day.
absolutely. And that, what you're describing with people calling themselves entrepreneurs and like multitasking, doing a bunch of different things at once.
Mhm.
Yes, that's an important part of entrepreneurship. But also, what's really going to move the needle is the unique, valuable insights when
Right.
you're focused deep on things that will move the needle. Like
Right.
innovative, valuable work comes from when you're slowing down, you're
Mhm.
focusing, you're being creative, you're
Mhm.
thinking through things in a really thorough manner. It's not
Yes.
going to come when you're like, oh, I'll just do a little bit of, you
It's a
need
little
to
bit of that, right? You need that focus.
got to
Yeah.
be able to do both.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what was the second thing? I know you said there were four components.
Yeah. Second thing was um, the emotional and mental resilience. So I was kind of giving that anecdote about while I was going through that, substance abuse training,
Mm-hmm.
that I had to deal with that anxiety and teach myself that I can sit with this and it's okay. So
Yes.
that's a big part of it, that there's a self-reflective component of
Mm-hmm.
this work that's really important. What do I feel when I take my phone away physically? Oh, I feel tightness in my chest. I feel like my jaw is clenching up because I feel like I'm so uncomfortable that it's not on. I feel like I'm going to miss an email. And then you have to evaluate how important is it, are all those things? Is it more important that you're available to respond to an email right away? Or is it more important that you're sitting down and being highly effective on this really important work that's going to move the needle for your business?
Yes, that's awesome, man. Yeah, the emotional side. Now, when you're talking about staying focused, though, that can get very tricky because there's family involved, there's other factors, there's other variables involved, and it becomes a challenge on what exactly you need to be focusing on and how much time you give a specific task, because your professional life is going to require different energy than your personal life and obviously your physical life, and it's going to be on you to balance that out in some kind of way. But it does start with the intention, and then figuring out where your emotions are going to be during the day. Actually, so I teach, right? And on Thursdays, I get here around 6 a.m. Normally it's like 9, and by 1 o'clock, by 12 o'clock, I'm out there playing football with the kids. But today,
Mm.
since I got here so early, I found myself really cranky. So I was screaming at him a little more. And then I was wondering why I was feeling so like, why am I, I'm normally not as animated or don't get as angry, during this time. And I looked at my colleague. I'm like, wait a minute. I got here at 6 this morning. That's why. I
Yeah.
was like, I got here at 6 this morning. So at this hour, I'm kind of losing it. Or like any little talking back and all that, I'm kind of losing. I was like, okay, that's where it is. Then being aware
Yeah.
of that too is something that I've had to develop in as well. Because like when you talk about focus, being aware of where your mental state is, that's a big one as well. So anyway, the third one was what?
Uh, that actually kind of ties into the third one. It's
Yeah,
like,
I figured that because it was like the way I was feeling just now when I was like, yeah, he's really hitting on some triggers now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the third thing is the something that you kind of just mentioned it, and like you had this little moment of reflection. You're like, wait, why am I so cranky right now, right? And
Right.
that's that kind of reflective process, I think, is so essential for improving your
Mhm,
habits. You know, your habits are going to take you to where you need to go in life,
mhm,
right? So what I think is if you spend a little bit of time every week
mhm.
looking at what you did that week and analyzing how effective was I in this?
Yeah.
How, what could I do to improve this other thing? And then, like you mentioned, there's all these other aspects that you're balancing, right? Family, your
Mhm.
life, your physical life, your work, right? And
Right.
you're gonna begin to start seeing patterns over time about how those things affect each other.
Yes.
Like, oh, when I spend time with my family in the evenings and just am really able to be present with them and put my phone away, I find that I'm more productive at work the next day. I feel
Yeah.
like clear, right? And you need to compile all that data. So what I say is like this is the weekly review is an iterative process.
Yeah.
Every single week, you're going to approach it with a mindset of a curious scientist and
Mhm,
be looking at all the variables you have at play, put them out in front of you,
mhm.
and say, what can I adjust? And I'm going to try this next week and see if it makes an improvement. You
Yep.
do that 52 times in a year,
Mhm.
that's 52 incremental improvements that you're making. Now,
Every-
you do that for 5 years, like I've done, it's like I feel like I'm almost an entirely different person
Exactly.
after 5 years of doing that, you know?
Mhm.
So that's the third thing I think really important for people to
And
be doing.
also on that note too is you don't go back to those substances. You don't go back to the things that you thought were helping you or that you didn't realize were kind of having a negative effect on you. You really have the moment of reflection and realize, wait, I'm normally not like this. There's something going on. Let me look back. Okay, that was we really look back on the entire day. What was different? What was, not sort of the same thing that you as part of your routine. See it, fix it, and get clear on it and move forward for the next day. I say it all the time. You regular consumers hear me say it all the time. You're getting better or you're getting worse every single day. you're not staying the same. I know that's the picture that they try to paint to you. I know that's what, media and the mainstream media, everyone wants to move you in that direction. But debunk that idea that you're gonna just stay the same. You're either gonna get better or you're gonna get worse. It's up to you to decide every single day. So decide to get better, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
So
Yeah.
what would be the fourth point?
Um, the fourth thing is psychoeducation. I just,
Yes,
I
sir.
think
Yes,
a
sir.
big
Like,
part of it is learning about what it does to you, like how it affects you, right? You kind of mentioned the word dopamine hits, right?
oh yeah.
Like people need to know about the effects of how they're interacting with technology, how it affects their mind, how it affects their ability to do things. Some people don't realize that if they're looking at reels on their way to work,
Ugh.
like TikTok reels, and getting that dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit, and then they show up at work and they try to focus on this task that requires really deep thought, you're not going to be able to focus. People say to me all the time, I can hardly read a book anymore. It's because all the time you're spending so much of your day
Mhm.
priming your brain for these short term hits of dopamine. You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to read. Sorry. Like
Wow.
I
That's a
I watch it happen to myself too. Like
yeah.
if I'm slipping up and I'm going, going falling back on old habits, which does happen sometimes. It happens to everybody. That happens to me too. I'll notice I'm try to read and I'm like, I can't focus. My mind's everywhere. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah.
People just need that psychoeducation to be aware of what's happening.
Exactly. That has actually happened to me too, especially during this. I'm from Maryland. I grew up in Maryland, so I
Mm.
was around all the politics. I played football, and being in Maryland, I was mixed in with a lot of what we're seeing going on in this election season that we're on. So, sometimes I'll sit down, I'll read a book, and then the politics may pull me away a little bit just to hear what's going
Yeah.
on. So I myself need to be aware of it as well, and it's not something that we are here talking to you as if we have it all figured out every day. No, this is stuff that we work towards. And again, you have to be very intentional about it because without you even realizing it, without it, with even a blink of an eye, you can look at your phone, see some stuff you don't like, and you're like, wait, what happened? Like that has happened to me. You get a text like, are you serious? And then it throws off a lot of what I actually planned. So when it comes to the work that you do for companies, I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to speak a little bit about how focus helps business owners. I mean, you had on your website you had mentioned something about companies with a junior workforce and things like that. So I'll let you kind of explain that a little bit, and we'll go from we'll close up soon.
Yeah, sure. So with the junior workforce, I'm really referring to people that are my age and younger. I'm about to
Mhm.
turn 35.
Right.
Um, the reason that I tailored this to the junior workforce is just because they are the people that I think could benefit
Mhm.
most from particularly the psychoeducation component of it, like understanding how this affects them.
Right.
Um, but I do want to be like really honest and say that statistically, they're only marginally more affected by this stuff than older generations are. So
Right.
this stuff actually really impacts everybody. It impacts younger people a little bit more.
Right.
But anyway, just to speak to like what I'm doing, I'm I'm recognizing that this younger cohort of people is entering the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z will make up a quarter of the workforce
Right.
by the end of next year, right? And there are so many issues with um, distraction. Like I said, this is a generation that defines themselves as multitaskers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're still doing well in terms of getting the results because um they have such fluidity and capabilities with technology,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, but I think that they could even be bringing so much more to companies if they're able to handle this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So really my aim is to work with teams of people help instill a culture in companies of prioritizing focus and moving away from this completely fragmented state of attention that we have in the modern workplace.
Hmm.
I'm also not only trying to work with people in the junior workforce, but I'm also trying to work with leaders themselves because I
Hmm.
know that a lot of executives are really struggling with that kind of fragmented attention due to the nature of their work.
Right.
So those are the two main things that I'm trying
And
to.
then not only that too, the ones like you refer to, like the older, the people kind of in the older generation, I'm not going to call them old, but the ones who didn't have to really need social media to build their business, if they don't adapt to it, then they won't be in business for long. I've seen a ton of companies that had a great concept, a great message, a great mission, but they couldn't get in front of enough people. And, the opportunity to hire maybe a social media manager or to do something via social media, they missed that opportunity, and eventually, people just stopped coming because they stopped hearing about it. Even now, for myself, when you think about a situation like the other day, was it 2 weeks ago, I wanted to get a haircut, but I happened to be in a part of the area that I wasn't normally, and I pulled out one of these and found a local one, and it was really professional. Got my little lineup, and I looked at the guy. I was like, this is a really professionally run organization. They got the
Mhm.
iPad set up, and you don't have to wait in line and all that kind of stuff. So utilizing technology to your benefit can allow for opportunities to grow, and it can allow for you to get in front of more people. But you got to humble yourself. You got to be able to say, look, I'm gonna talk to some of the younger cats and say, how do we use this to get a laser like point and get it right to my client, right to my customer? And that's how you use it. That would be the kind of the ideal way if you're a listener and you're a business owner, or listener, most of the listeners here are business owners. But if you're really trying to get clarity on your business, that would be the best way to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that's the point of collaboration for a
Yeah.
lot of these kind of business owners that are in a different generation and
Mhm.
they're working with younger people. That's what I'm saying. It's like these younger people, even with all this distraction, the multitasking and everything. Um, Another thing I've heard a lot of leaders complain about is like not as developed social skills due to more online communication. Even with all that, they're still getting the results. You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
There's a good
So,
if and like that's why I was so excited to have you on, because if you can establish that mix of younger, focused young people and older folks that really do have a mission in business, you're gonna get a great mix, and you're gonna get great companies that are really gonna be servicing people the best way, because it won't just be a local thing. It will be, look, we can serve people all across the world. However, we're able to kind of stay grounded in our values, stay grounded in our principles, and we're able to grow that way. And you don't have to, nowadays, you don't really have to go and build another brick and mortar store. Like, you don't have to go build another Blockbuster. You can see what happened with them, right?
right,
Netflix
right.
came in, and now everything is streaming. Even now, Netflix is out of business, pretty much out of, not Netflix. Yeah, Netflix had to go to streaming service. Before it was just
Yeah.
DVDs and all that kind of stuff. So, I do want to be very respectful of your time. I appreciate you coming on. What would you say is the next phase to your business, and what do you see coming down the pipeline and all that good stuff?
Well, one thing that I think is the next phase is working with business owners
Mhm.
directly on their the problems that they're experiencing.
Right.
So that's something I'm trying to transition a little bit into doing more, especially because I feel like that one-on-one support that I
Yeah.
can provide for somebody could be extremely transformative. Um, I've been successful in doing it with a bunch of my clients as a therapist, and I'm just trying to scale. Over the past couple of years of doing this, I'm recognizing that there's something I really know how to do.
Yeah.
Is something that's so valuable that I
Mhm.
have. I'm just trying to figure out how to scale it up and bring it to as many people as I can. I can work with the junior workforces. I'm really excited to do that, but also if I can work with the leaders
Yeah.
and get them to kind of experience that for themselves and then,
Mhm.
lead the way as far as
Yes.
like creating the culture. I think that's also going to be really valuable for for teams and companies.
Yes. And what's the best way for people to reach out and get in touch with you if they'd like to hear more?
Yeah, you can hit my email at show@focused.ltd. And you can also shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I believe my name is going to be in there, but Sho Ishikura. So yeah, if anybody wants to shoot me a DM, feel free.
We'll include all that in the show notes as well. So, Show, the final thing I do to close out all the episodes is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are back to, I'd say, let's say it's the first day where you had to give up your phone. You're like itching, you're waking up your anxiety. I want you to pretend that that version of you has come to the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
I like that. I think I would say that there's something on the other side of this discomfort that you're experiencing that's going to be incredibly liberating.
Hmm.
And so many of the problems that you're experiencing right now um, do not have to be forever. There's a liberation on the other side of it, and the only way to find it is to feel through all of the discomfort
So
and anxiety and to be with it. And you're tough enough to handle it, and you got it. Is what
that's it. I have absolutely nothing to add to that. The mic is officially dropping. Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.